So, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. So let's just start off by asking, what's your name and what school do you attend?
My name is Iampieri. I go to Howard Community College.
Mm. And you know what? I didn't ask you this before, but what year are you in?
I'm in my second year.
Okay, perfect. And so what did you do during the fall semester of 2023?
I got to work with Beyond Rhetoric through Howard Community College, volunteering in Southern and Western Maryland in different youth detention centers. Got to play chess, play different card games with the youth there, working on social, emotional, and communication skills along the way.
Yeah, exactly. So what was that like? Just the fact that you're talking about volunteering and spending time in different facilities. What was that like for you?
It was really eye-opening. I think I went into it with a preconceived notion of what an internship and what volunteering would look like.
Mm.
And I was surprised by how into it I got and how it didn't feel like work. I know when we think of the word volunteering, we think of something that we're doing because we want to do it while it's still, work. This felt abundantly rewarding, and so at all points along the way, it really just felt like something I was fully in and wanted to be a part of.
Yeah, wow, that's great. So what would you say you learned from the experience?
I'd say that there's a lot of factors at play that lend youth to the system, maybe more factors than we might consider. And that if you go into an internship or a volunteering type situation like this with an open mind, you're bound to learn something, and you're bound to have biases that you may or may not have gone into it with, disproven or maybe rearranged.
Wow. So let me ask you a question on that. If there is a bias that you might think the majority of people may have going into a situation like this,
Mhm.
what might you say that bias is?
Well, speaking for myself, but I would say that possibly other people feel this way as well, is that when I think of youth who are in youth detention facilities, and what I was talking about earlier with that there's multiple factors at play that lend youth to the system, is that going into it, I feel like part of my bias was that I assumed that there was mainly one contributing factor that led youth into the system, and that was a lack of stability in the household, right?
Right.
However, through different courses at Howard Community College and doing this internship and getting to connect with so many different youth from very clearly different walks of life, things definitely commonalities, but all different types of people. I learned that there are multiple things at play, such as, socioeconomic status, geography, access to education, access to other resources
Right.
that will lend youth to the system. Whereas prior to this internship, myself or other people might have thought, well, what's going on in the household that's making
Right.
this youth, experience what they're experiencing? But
Right.
along the way, I found that there's a multitude of youth in there that have, from what I've heard, relatively stable households or households that were similar to ones that I was in. And so I think going into it with an open mind helps me a lot, because I was able to hear them as opposed to hearing what I had gone into it with.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. Um, so now that it's over, right? It sounds like you've had this great experience. Now that it's over, what are you gonna do now?
Well, for now, it's finishing my time at HCC, expecting to transfer to a four-year university. In the meantime, still volunteering right now in Western Maryland with the youth, still doing chess, still doing cards, and, learning along the way. While I feel like I learned so much during my internship, moving past the internship and just, continuing to be involved with them, I feel there's really endless information that I could learn. During my time there, there's some youth that were there for the entirety of my semester, and then there's some that were there for a week or 2 weeks. So I got to see, a bunch of people come in and out, and as I'm saying, they're not all from the same walk of life. They don't all have the same story to tell, and so,
Right.
while the internship is over, my time with the youth certainly isn't. And so I'd say, moving forward with my education as one does, but really staying in something that I have found a lot of passion in. I think, seeing how much I can relate, but also not relate to the youth. It's a very interesting dynamic that we're able to bring things to each other,
Right.
So continuing to work in those spaces is definitely a part of my plan for growing as a student and a person.
Right. One of the things you just said, it's very curious about. You said being able to relate and not relate to the youth. Give give one example of a way that you felt like you related to them, and then one way you felt like maybe this wasn't the best, relation.
Right, for sure. I think part of the way that I was able to relate to them was experiencing behavioral issues accompanied by self-doubt. Growing up, I experienced a lot of behavioral issues. I experienced doubt in the vein that I felt that maybe I was not able to surpass my struggles. And I felt I was able to relate on that note, in the sense that, like, I understand what it's like to feel like you are out of control of your own actions, and that you're not ever going to be able to escape that, And so I'm able to relate in a sense that I've been through it and I escaped it, and there's ways that you can grow and find more of yourself, you know what I mean? Even if it's on your own, even if you don't have other, people supporting you, there's a lot that you can do with yourself if you just believe, So relate in that sense. And then also, it was really important for me to not be able to relate along the way.
What do you mean by that?
We're providing an experience for each other. I am able to coach the youth when it comes to communication skills that I have, learned through adulthood and have, developed while managing my own challenges. But then there's also the layer of that, like, myself, the people who work in the detention centers are relatively removed from being youth ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, it's been a while since I was their age and was in their mind, And while I can relate to certain experiences they've been through, it's important for me to not be able to relate to everything that they're going through, because if not, they wouldn't be able to teach me anything. You know what I mean? That would ultimately help me, um, work in the community, continue to work with other youth that are like them, and be able to have something to go off of. I can't, walk through life only, only having my knowledge. I felt like it was really important along the way to, like, listen to their experiences that I cannot relate to, you know what I mean? And be able to use mine to make those go together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. And I think that sometimes as adults, we want to kind of control the situation or have to have answers for everything. And it sounds like what you're saying is that there's a humility embedded in just being there. Hey, listen, I'm your student too. Like, oh, wow, that's a new song, right? Absolutely. Or that new dance, or that new phrase that you're using. It doesn't necessarily, and that's just the shallow stuff. I mean, there's other stuff that you were sharing about the life stuff, right? And cultural stuff, perhaps. We don't have to understand or own everything in order to engage with this population, these youths, right?
Absolutely. I think there's moments along the way where, my mentorship and knowledge was crucial for their experience, but I also feel like another part that was crucial was, as you're kind of saying, just to hear them and just to listen. You know what I mean? I don't have to know everything. I don't have to, be there's a level of respect that when I enter the conversation with them, it's going to reap the best benefit for all of us. I feel going into it, as you said, being, humble, exercising humility, really allows for the most organic connection to come,
Right. Well, that's one of the things that I noticed, when I came and observed you interacting, even from day one, when we walked in there the first day and we were playing chess. And then later I came and observed you when you were doing it independently, that you just had a natural rhythm about you. It didn't seem affected. It didn't seem put on. You were able to be in their space and at the same time exercise, like, I don't want to say the term because sometimes it's pejorative, authority.
Mhm.
They knew that you were leading this thing, but at the same time, you allowed them to, right, have agency and to have choice. And it was really just dynamic watching you in that environment. So if you had to just say, like, I would say, is there anything you'd like to share with anyone else out there who might be thinking about volunteering and even volunteering for the population that we serve, right? Youth who are detained in the state of Maryland.
Yeah, is that essentially if I can do it, you can do it. Going into the internship, this was my first internship I've taken at Howard Community College. It was one of my first times, formally volunteering in life, and I think, going into it, I felt, am I capable of doing this time-wise, commitment wise, knowledge wise? There was a lot of doubts going into it.
Wow.
Something that I would share with, any students who are interested in volunteering, whether it be through this program or another, is that you can do it. And the professors at HCC are there to push you towards success. I, at no point was I, going through this process, not knowing what my, next step would be or where this was going to lead me. I had you as well as other professors along the way to connect with regarding this process. And so I'd say, do away with the self-doubt and jump in, because before you know it, it's going to feel very natural and very second nature. When I first started, I was like, I felt confident navigating the spaces, as you're saying, with a, sense of authority in a way.
Right.
But it's still, it's you are there in a professional capacity. You're dealing with, a lot of different personalities, including your own, and
Right.
so be be gone with self-doubt and believe in
Wow.
yourself, and know that there are a lot of faculty at Howard Community College who believe in you and will help you.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's great. And lastly, I always say lastly, and it's never lastly, but hopefully this will be the lastly. So when I first met you, I met you, and I don't want to say the place because you may not want to say the place, but don't say the place. Only because it's a business that one may not, feel like, supporting or whatever. But anyway, so I met you in that capacity, and I didn't really know you, but I met you, and hey, you served me, and I was like, okay, great, thank you. And then when I was at, I gave a presentation at HC Howard Community College, I was like, oh, wait a second, he looks familiar, right? And then you said, hey, I'm the guy that served you to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, wow, wow, wow. So I mentioned all of that to say that even though you are a community college student, in many ways, I don't think of you as a student. I think of you first as the adult that I saw out in the world, right? As going throughout life, right? You had a job, a full-time job, right? And the reason why I bring that up is because I wanted to ask, because what you just said basically was steered towards students, right? What about
Mhm.
adults? Do you see adults doing the thing that you did, and what would be your encouragement to them? People that have full-time jobs and are in the world engaging in that way.
Thank you for asking me that, because that was another thing that was at play in my personal life, that working a lot, capitalism never stops, God, I started to feel as though pursuing higher education past what I had already started, because I had started going to Howard Community College and took a very longer than expected hiatus. And that's where you had met me, at where I was working. And, I think that for a lot of people, uh, there's a kind of, you get into your routine of going to work and you wake up and you do the same thing every day, and you start to feel like that's just what you do and that's just your life, and that, introducing something else or maybe reframing your life, what you do for work, is impossible. I think especially when you've been, working with a company for a certain amount of time, you start to feel, okay, well, this is just what I do. And I encourage you to challenge that. I encourage people to challenge that, because I felt like I got into a rut that kind of made me feel like this is where I'm at, this is what I do. However, getting back into school, making it work for myself, hustling, doing this internship, I have a completely different frame of mind regarding life, regarding myself, than when you first met me a couple years ago when I was working at that job. So similar to telling a student to leap in, forget being a student, be an adult who's not a student and leap into something that you're passionate about. Volunteering with this population has really caused me to view everything that goes on around me differently. I see youth around me just in society, and I wonder, are they struggling with challenges that the youth in the facilities that I'm in are struggling with? Are they struggling with things that I did when I was younger? And what interventions could be put in place now to prevent them from, ending up in a facility? You don't have to be a student, to think critically like that. And it's never too late. You're never that deep in. I got into that mindset that I'm too deep into where my life is at right now to do something completely different.
Right.
And I made it happen for myself. And if I did, so can you, student or not. And I promise this was by far one of the most rewarding things that I've done at Howard Community College, or really I'd say in life. And so I'd say it's 100% worth it, and you can do it.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Will. We appreciate your time and look forward to working with you and seeing you in the detention centers.
Thank you.